My dear friend Nipun, many years ago, told me something that I didn't quite believe. He said, it's the little things that matter. At that time, in my infinite wisdom and much younger days, I was in search for the big thing, the big solution that would change education, that would change India, that would change the world. Until stories began to weave through my life. I met Sister Cyril, who ran at the age of her late 70s, a high-income school in Kolkata. And when I went in to meet Sister Cyril, small, tiny office, piles of paper, cats sitting on top of the paper. I was fascinated because in her high-income school, she was housing and educating 300 street girls. She took me into a big open space and she said, Shaheen, what do you see? And I said, I see a gym. And she said, this isn't a gym, look carefully. And she pointed to mattresses on the side of the gym. And she said, this is where 300 kids every day live so that they can be educated along with my girls. And I looked at her and I said, don't the parents object that you have children from the street living here, you have high-income kids living here? And she looked at me and she said, would any parent dare to ask me, why do you teach math? Would they dare to ask, why do you teach social studies? How can they dare to ask, why do we teach compassion? Julio, very different part of the world in the US, is walking late at night in the bitter cold, and a young teenager comes to him, pulls out a knife and says, give me your wallet. Julio's scared, he takes out his wallet, he gives it to the kid. The kid walks away, but Julio turns and says, hey kid, and the kid turns around and he says, it's a bitter cold night and you don't have a coat. Why don't you take my coat? And so the kid's a little surprised, but he takes the coat, turns, walks away, and Julio again turns and says, hey kid, I was just about to go have dinner at the local diner. Why don't you come have dinner with me? And the two sit together, Robber, Julio, talk for 2 hours, eat, and at the end of the dinner, Julio says, I would love to buy you dinner, but you have my wallet. And so the kid takes his wallet, pushes it across the table back to Julio, and Julio says, that's not enough, kid. I need one more thing. I need your knife. And the kid takes his knife and he puts it across the table, and Julio walks off, and the kid walks off. And closer to home, and if you recently saw the wonderful film Lion, Teach for India fellow Ajay found himself in a very similar situation where a little girl in his class, Irshana, had been missing for 2 years from her family. She had climbed onto a train by mistake. The train had left, come to the city, and for 2 years in Delhi, nobody could trace her family. Ajay was determined to find Irshana's family. And so every day he would sit with her, talking to her, trying to jog her memory. Finally, she mentioned something about a description of a train station. He took that picture of her, got onto a train, landed up at a small village, went house to house, and found her family. Incredible stories that began to convince me of what Nipun actually said. Maybe it's the little things that matter. I would find myself every few months back in Ahmedabad at the Gandhi ashram, and I was drawn to this one quote of Gandhiji's that is there at the ashram. I am mostly busy making sandals these days. I've already made about 15 pairs. When you need new ones now, please send me the measurements. And when you do so, mark the places where the strap is to be fixed, that is on the outer side of the big toe and the little one. How incredible, I thought, that the man that was planning India's independence put the same level of effort and love into the making of a chappal. The people who do little good things, maybe they can change the world. Maybe who you are can change the world. And so in my own work in education, I began to think about this. What if education did this? What if it taught you not just what you want to do, but it asked you who you wanted to be? What were the qualities at the end of your life that you wanted to be defined by? What if that really was a reimagined education? And so what do these reimagined children in this reimagined education actually look like? Top middle is my daughter when she was about 6 or 7 years old. And at the bottom, you see her friend in the purple, Parthavi. They had a 3-legged race coming up. And my daughter was very tall, and her best friend, Parthavi, was very short. And so I sat with her and I said, Samara, are you sure that you want to be Parthavi's partner? Because it's actually very hard to jump when you're different heights. And my daughter looked at me perplexed, and I couldn't understand why. And then finally she said, Mama, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah. And she said, Mama, what's more important, your best friend or winning? And I thought, that's what a reimagined child perhaps is saying. And then in Chennai, one of our Teach for India fellows, this is Vedika, teaches 8-year-old children. And she ran them through a design thinking process where she asked the kids, choose any problem in the world that you care about and solve it. And the children in Vedika's class, 8-year-old children, decided that what they wanted to solve was making the life of one of their classmates, Shiva, who wasn't able to hear, better. They said Shiva's disconnected. And so they went through this incredible process of trying to understand how Shiva was feeling, imagining what the world would look like for Shiva if that problem was solved. And then these kids developed a sign language for Shiva. They learned it, they taught it to him, and today they communicate using that sign language. How incredible a reimagined education could be. A few weeks ago, I was at B.D. Somani's school, and the 5-year-olds were explaining to me with great pride these structures that they had made. They had gone out, if you recognize it, on the left is the High Court, on the right is Siddhi Vinayak Mandir, and they had gone out, observed everything from the stray dog eating food downstairs to where the judge is, to the fact that the lifts need pulleys, to the fact that at night you need electricity. And I had a 5-year-old explain all of this to me with so much confidence and pride. Again, a reimagined education. And then I had a meeting a few weeks ago with little Malhar. He's 6 years old, and the reason he wanted to meet me is because way off in his home in America, he made chocolates and he sold them, and then he did research on where he wanted to donate the money, and he chose Teach for India. And so he came to very proudly hand over to me thousands of rupees for the children of Teach for India. He's 6 years old and exhibiting leadership today. And then one of my personal most favorite children, little Vijay, who used to live very close to his school, and then they couldn't afford that home in the community, so they moved 2.5 hours away. And he used to commute, but he used to leave his house at 4 in the morning because his brother was in the morning shift. He didn't want his brother to travel alone, and his school was in the afternoon. So as a result, from 4 in the morning when he left his house, he came to school, and he'd reach back home at midnight. Not a sustainable situation, so he and his fellow Sajda talked a lot about it. And Vijay solved the problem by saying, I will rent a little room close to school, But the way I'll be able to pay for that room is I'll run it as a tuition center for kids who are not in school. I'll use that money to be able to live in the room, to be able to go to school every day. And that's what Vijay did and is doing today. And finally, really far away, this is in New Zealand, 10th standard kids, as their entire year-long curriculum, built a 4-bedroom house. A real 4-bedroom house that they were going to donate to a homeless family at the end of the year. And I watched that and I thought about that. Look at the math that they learned, the science that they learned, the values that they learned. But in doing something that was so meaningful, that would change someone else's life. Again, a reimagined education. And so I think about that and I think about what would it be like if we really started a kids' education revolution, if we were able to tell our children that today, no matter who you are, no matter what age you are, you can drive change in the world. And there's no one to explain this better than little Kusum, so we'll watch a short film.
The vision for our community is one day everyone will get an excellent education. So it is talking about everyone. That means each child will get an excellent education, not only one person. So that's why we all should work together and think about the vision. And I think my first step will be thinking only about the vision. And then second step, thinking about the community. And the third step will be thinking a vision up for the community. So I'm not going to do that alone. I need everyone's help. If I will make a vision alone, then that means I'm not making for my community. If I have to make a vision for my community, we all have to work together and then work on that vision. I think this is important because everyone have vision for each other. If it is for community, then it should be everyone, because if I will say my vision for community is this, so I want to do this. Do you think alone you will do can you do something? No. So if we will work together and do teamwork, okay, let's take an example. To make a house, does only one person is building that house? No, because everyone is working together to build that house. So same way, to build a vision, we not only need one person, and one person only can't do it. We all need to work together, and then the vision will be completely finished very early. If you find out any child near you who is not able to get a good education, please help that child also, because if you will help that child, then his future and your country's future will be better than now how is your country's future. So please help that person, because I don't only want in my country everyone should get excellent education. I want in each country there should be an excellent education, and that country should go ahead and so be proud on their future and their children around them.
Imagine if our kids did that. They built their own education, but while building the blocks of their own education, what if they spread their light to others and they were charged to actually lead this movement for education reform? There's no better example to bring all of this together than one of our dear students, Priyanka, who grew up in a very troubled environment, father in jail, single-parent family, and came into the Teach for India world on this incredible journey that we went through to make a musical. Through that, her colors started to shine, and she found herself getting a full scholarship to the United World College, where she studies in Italy. She's on her way now to the US to a top university. The incredible thing about that story, though, isn't the academic journey. It's the power of her example. Today, when she posts on the WhatsApp group to other kids in Teach for India, she shows them that with belief and hard work, irrespective of your background, this is possible. Imagine thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of children like Vijay and Priyanka, what they could do to actually reimagine and literally redraw the country for our children. So how do we do this? And one simple word, we reorient the way that we think. We learn that we need to ask and listen to our children. We learn that irrespective of background, kids can do incredible things. We reorient ourselves to saying perhaps blocks are more powerful than blackboards. Perhaps teachers asking questions are more powerful than teachers giving answers. We reorient ourselves to saying our kids, even in the toughest situations, have the ability to drive change. We reorient ourselves, perhaps most significantly, to say that the purpose of education is not that 95% on an exam and the fulfillment of the individual, but it's much deeper and much broader and is about contribution to the world. And then, once we reorient ourselves, we do our little bit, knowing that our little bits collectively can add up and will add up to giving all children in the country an excellent education.